All right, let's get started. So for this lecture, we're going to be talking about CSS libraries and also some other libraries. And the reason for the weird title is that we were originally only going to talk about CSS libraries today, but now we're also including other libraries. And before we start, here's the same reminder slide from the TypeScript lecture. Basically, reminder that milestone 2 is due on Tuesday, and it's a lot of work. So please come to the hackathon tomorrow to get work done and get live help from staff. And yeah, just read through this again on your own time if you haven't already. Anyway, so now let's get to libraries. So what are libraries and why do you care? So the official definition is that library is a collection of implementations of behavior written in a language with a well-defined interface from which you can invoke the behavior. And what this really means is just libraries are a bunch of code that other people wrote for you and which you can incorporate into your own projects. So for example, our utilities.js file in Catbook is sort of like a library. It helps us handle get requests and post requests. Because if you look at like the, for example, get/API/comments, that functionality it's not actually built into React, right? The code for that is written in utilities and we keep using it over and over. So basically libraries can be very helpful if you're short on time and you need to implement a complicated feature that someone else might have already done for you. So we've actually been using a lot of libraries during WebLab already. Can anyone think of some examples? Just say them. Yeah, React is one. Yeah. Yep, Mongoose. What? Router? Yeah, these are all examples of libraries we've already been using. And for example, in Alex's lecture this morning, we also talked about Canvas, right, for drawing stuff. And just a reminder before, in case anyone's confused, we're using the reach router library for routing between pages, which is not the same as the React router library. So if you're looking for documentation or just looking on Stack Overflow, make sure you're looking for reach router. So the cool thing here is that libraries can basically do anything you want them to. Sorry, what? Okay. And what I mean by this is for any task that a lot of people have had to do before, there's probably a library that already does it for you. And just for the rest of this lecture, all we're going to be doing is we're going to look at some examples of libraries that I picked out like a month ago, which are like some CSS libraries, a music library, and a graphics library. And we're just going to try to add them into Catbook. And that's all we're going to do for today. And we might run out of time since this lecture got cut short, 15 minutes, but that's okay. We don't have to get through all of it. And also, never mind, there's no also. All right, cool. Oh yeah, sorry. Also, I picked these libraries like a month ago and wrote some code, and then I haven't looked at them since then. So I actually don't remember how to use them. And that's good because the goal is to give you guys like a live demo of figuring out a new library from scratch. So, oh, oops, I had more slides. All right. And before we actually get started though, there's a catch, which is that libraries are great and they're really convenient, but you have to actually know how to use them. So for example, it took us like 3 days to teach you guys how to use React. So if you do want to use a library, you need to make sure to spend some time reading the documentation, and some libraries just won't be very well documented. So there's always a trap that you can fall into where you start using a library, but you realize you have no idea how to actually use it. And just some more general info, if you want to install a library, you just find the library name on Google, and then you write like npm install whatever the library is. And that will add that library to your node modules and also to your package.json. And to actually use the library, you use import library. Anyway, so now let's actually get started. You don't need to follow along here because we'll just be doing a bunch of weird coding. And yeah, we're going to look at 2 examples of CSS libraries first. These are Tailwind and Indesign, and I picked them just because I've used them before. And you're going to see soon that these are 2 very opposing like philosophies of CSS libraries. Tailwind is you're going to have to write all the CSS yourself, but it'll be easier than like writing normal CSS. And Design, you're not going to write any CSS yourself. Actually, all of it will be done by the person who made the library. And just a warning before we start that it's cool to use these in your projects, but it might be easier to implement your own HTML and CSS. Anyway, let's get started with our first library, which is Tailwind. And I have a link here, which is how to set up Tailwind. So let's see. There's, oh, yikes. So these are the setup instructions, but they're kind of long. So let's skip to step 2 or method 2. So the site says to add Tailwind, we just add this to our index.html. So let's do that. So what we're actually going to do today is with the CSS libraries is I have this example of a site support form. And actually, let me undo this first. So all we've done here is we've created a site support form, and it just has like a select box, an input box, and a checkbox, and the submit button. So this is just if the user wants to submit feedback about the Capbook website. So this is what the form looks like with normal styling. And for the rest of this, for like the next basically few minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to make the same form again, but we're going to style it with our CSS libraries, and we're just going to compare the results and see how it looks. Yeah, so this is the default styling for this form. And now let me import Tailwind CSS. And here's a copy of the same form. Let's change this form 1 to a form 2. And all right, so now you might see that we're on a different version of the same form now, but we've actually removed the default CSS styling and we're using Tailwind now. And you can see that at first this looks a lot uglier, right? Because basically all the styling got removed. So now let's see how we actually use Tailwind. Here's a link to the documentation. So the way Tailwind works is you guys are probably used to the way we taught CSS in this class, which is if I want to style form 2, let me make this bigger. If I want to style form 2, the way we taught you guys how to do this is you make a new file called form2.css, and then you like write all your CSS classes in there, right? But with Tailwind, actually, you don't actually write any new CSS files. Instead, what you do is you just specify the class name for this div, and then you put all your CSS directly in this class. So let's see how to do that. So for example, this site support was supposed to be in an H1, meaning it's like a header that's supposed to be big, right? But it's not big anymore because Tailwind removed that. So first, let's figure out how to make this text bigger. So I'm going to look up font size in the documentation. And okay, to change the font size, we use text dash like 3XL. So let's do that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add text dash 3XL to this class name, and that should make it bigger. Yeah, okay, all right. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how Tailwind works, right? All you do is you read the documentation on the website for the CSS you want to import, like making the text bigger. Then you just add it to your HTML class name, and that styles the thing. Does that make sense so far? All right, cool. So let's do this for the rest of this page as well. So probably the next big thing is that this select should have like a border, right? But when you're not clicking on the thing, like the select border is actually gone. So let's figure out how to add a border. And we're just going to, I don't remember how to do any of this, so we're just going to keep looking at the documentation. So first we need to set a border width. And let's just set it to be 1 pixel. So I just copy border. So that goes here. And oh, look, we have a border now. You might not be able to see it well, but it's like a very faint gray, right? All right. What else can we do? We can change the border color. Let's make it pink just for fun. Don't do this in your actual website. Let's make it pink. All right. We have a pink border now. Wait, did that work? Is this pink? Okay, it's like really faint. Let's make this width bigger. All right, border of 8. All right, we have a pink border now. Woohoo. It's just really light. Okay, fine. And now let's make this looks really ugly. Well, it looks ugly for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that this is like a rectangle, right? So we need to change the border radius. So border radius, we just make it rounded. So all I do is I copy rounded XL. All right, cool. And now it's sort of rounded. Okay, anyway, we can do the same thing for this input text box. So I'll just copy in this class and put it in this input box as well. All right, this is also a weird pink border thing now. All right, let's just do one more thing. We're gonna add a border to this submit button. So let's do that. And okay, actually, you know what? This is getting hard to see, so I'm going to make this pink darker. Pink. All right, so these are all the different shades of pink we can use in Tailwind. So I'm just going to change it to border pink 500, and hopefully that's darker. 500. All right, cool. We have a dark pink border around our button now. Guys, this is really cool, right? Anyway, so now another problem that I can see immediately is that like this the padding between the text and the button border is really small, right? And that looks bad. So let's change that. So padding. How do we add padding? Oh, okay. How do I add padding? So if we want to add padding in the X direction, it looks like we just add a PX and then whatever padding we use. So let's do that. PX of, how do I stop doing this? Okay, PX of 2. All right, so now our border is not like attached to the text anymore, right? Yeah, any questions so far? Don't actually make forms that look like this. I'm just showing you guys how Tailwind CSS works, because this is like a really different way of writing CSS than what we taught in class, right? Yeah, so basically what you might have noticed is every time we want to style a new input or a new HTML tag, we have to write our own class, and that's pretty annoying. So if you have a lot of HTML in your website that all uses the same styling, it's probably better to not use Tailwind and just define your own class, because then you can reuse it. But if you have a lot of one-off elements that are all like different for some reason, then Tailwind is a good choice because it lets you write the CSS really quickly. Let's move on to a different library. So we're going to use Design next. And I wrote the setup instructions here, but basically we install it using npm install anti. And again, you don't need to follow along. And while that is happening, let me just switch to a different form. So now we're back at our unstyled feedback form, right? And this time we're going to style it using the Design CSS library. And you guys are going to see that this actually ends up being completely different from what we were doing earlier. Did this finish installing? Yes. And then we have to import this. All right, so now let's go to form 3. And let's also open up the Indesign documentation. All right, so this is what the Indesign documentation looks like. And basically, whenever you want to use a component, you just import the Indesign component. So what that means is like here we have a select tag, right? Which is like a dropdown. And this is using the normal HTML select tag now. But if we wanted to use Indesign, what we would do is we would just search for select in Indesign. So this is what the select tag in Indesign looks like. It's like a dropdown like this, right? So let's open up the code for that. And it looks like to use this, you just import select from ant-d. So let's do that. And now all we have to do is we take our select tag in HTML, which was like bracket select bracket, and we just replace it with the Indesign version, which is bracket select, but it's capitalized. And similarly for all the options. So let's just do that. Probably could have done this faster anyway. So let's save that and see how it looks. All right, so this looks pretty weird. I think, oh, we also have to change the width of the thing. So let me do that. All right, so now we have imported the select dropdown from Indesign. And you can see this is what it looks like, right? So basically this is like the opposite of Tailwind in the sense that we don't get to choose any of our own styling. Instead, all we do is we import the styling that Indesign already made for us. And you can see like, this is really cool, right? Like, let me just zoom in. Like, I can hover and then, whoa, like look at that blue outline that just appears, right? That's like, it's really cool. And if you're writing CSS for the first time on your own, like getting this to work is like, getting your components to be this clean is really hard, basically, is all I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's do the same thing. Now we have an input text box. And we want to convert this to Indesign too. Sorry, does everything make sense so far, by the way? Like with how this library works? All right, cool. So let's import, or let's look at input. All I'm doing here is just doing Control F and looking through the documentation, by the way. It's nothing complicated. So we import input. And now we change our input from a lowercase I to a capital I. And all right, this is pretty bad because the input now takes up the whole screen. But you know, there's some good things, like it has the consistent styling. Like this blue outline animation is just, I just like it a lot. I'm just gonna keep clicking on it. All right. Anyway, let's also change this width to be not the whole screen. Hopefully that works. Okay, that sort of works. Cool. Let's just finish up the rest of this form. So we also have a checkbox, which is, by the way, if you want to do a checkbox in HTML, it's just input type equals checkbox. So let's convert this as well. I keep opening the wrong tab. All right, there's actually just a separate checkbox component. So let's import that and then use it. So now this is a checkbox. And now we have a checkbox. Oh, whoa, okay. This is, I haven't seen this in a while. Like, look at this, right? Okay. So I'm not clicking the checkbox and then I click on it. Wait, first I hover over it and then there's an outline, right? And then like, whoa, okay. When I click on the checkbox, like there's a thing that comes out of it, right? Like, this is really hard to do, guys. Like, I don't know how impressed you guys, but like, you guys are, but like, come on, like, how do you do this? Okay, anyway, yeah. Oh, sorry, wrong thing. All right, now let's go to button. So we have a button left, and I think we probably just import button, and and then we use it, right? So, oh, there's actually many different kinds of buttons here. So we have our primary button, our default button, and our dashed button. So let's use the dashed button because it's like a dashed outline. So button type equals dashed. All right, so we have our dashed button now, and let's see how it looks. Let me zoom in. All right, so it's like a dashed outline. Okay, cool. So now we're done styling this form. Obviously, if you're doing this in your actual website, you should make it look nicer. Like you should make these things line up. But yeah, basically that's just an overview of how the Indesign library works. And now let's move on because I want to get to some other examples of non-CSS libraries as well. So what's next? Next, we're going to look at this library called Abcjs. So what it does is you type in a string like this, and then it renders it as like a music score. And then you guys can't hear my computer audio, but like when I press the play button, it actually plays the music from the score. So let's see how we do this. First, I need to install it. And now let's look into the documentation and see how we would figure out how to use this. So where's the documentation? Wait, does anyone see this? I don't know where the documentation is. Okay, that's the GitHub link. Oh, documentation, cool. Anyway, is this done installing? All right, it finished installing. So all we're going to do is I'm gonna go to the Kappa profile page and just like add basically what we just saw here. We're just gonna add a music score and a play button to play the music. So let's see how to do that. First, let me close this and let's go to getting started. So first we need to import the CSS. It should be in profile actually, right? All right. So we're going to import the CSS from Abcjs so that we can use the same styling they have. And then let's figure out how to get our music on the thing. So I'm going to replace, I'm just going to replace the right side of the Kappa profile page with our sheet music. So how do we do this? Okay, cool. It looks like we specify a div tag with an ID that we want to render the music in. So like here it's div ID equals paper. And then we tell Abcjs we want to render this music string inside this div. And I think that's it. So let's do that. First, I need to import Abcjs from Abcjs. Just importing the library. And now let's add this div, which is paper. And then we want to tell Abcjs to render music inside this div tag, right? So let's see how I can do that. Let's do it in a use effect. I don't know if this will work, by the way. Let's see if it works. Oh, okay, cool. So all we did so far was, that was really fast, right? All we did was we told Abcjs to render music in here. Then we put the div in our HTML, and now we have music. Sorry, does this make sense so far? All right, cool. And now this is just the music score, by the way. It doesn't have the like audio control and the play button. So let's figure out how to do that. I think we go to synthesize sound. And is there a code example anywhere? Yeah, usually when you're getting started with these libraries, you should just look for like a complete code example. I think this might be it. All right, cool. This looks like some good code that we can just copy. It might have errors. We'll fix it later. but let's just copy all this for now. We're going to put it in our use effect. Let me style it with prettier. Oh, there's an extra brace at the end. Wait, why can't I style this? Do I have to save it? Wait, no. All right. Anyway. Wait, is my prettier broken? Okay, let's comment this out for now. Okay, cool. Yeah, you should get the prettier VS Code extension, by the way. And then you should set up a keyboard shortcut where when you press a shortcut, it formats your code. But yeah. So all we've done is we've imported, all we did was we copied all the code so far. And let's see if it works. Okay, we have an error. Let me go to the console. This cursor control is not defined. Oh, okay. So the documentation code example was actually not complete. It had like a cursor control, but we have to see the section on cursor control to actually get the code for that. So let's do that. Where's cursor control? All right, cool. We're going to do the same thing. All we do is we look for a code example and then we copy it in. All right, cool. This is the cursor control. So I'm going to put that in here. And does that work now? Oh, okay. So now we have a different issue, which is, if you guys remember from earlier, Abcjs like specifies an HTML element to render the music in. Like it says render this sheet music inside the paper div, but it does the same thing with the audio. Wait, where's the audio? It does the same thing with the audio. Like it puts the audio controls in here. So we have to define an audio tag. Also, I might have some other issues, but we'll fix them later. All right, cool. So now we have music and we have like a play button. And I can hear it from my computer, but you guys probably can't. But anyway, that's not important. Anyway, I think we want to copy this music string over, right? Because these two code examples use different music. Let's see how that looks. All right, so now we have the same music from earlier. And there's a libraries branch in Capbook where if you check out that, you can see all the code we've written so far. But yeah, all we did was we took Abcjs documentation, we copied some code over, and then we imported it. We just embedded that into our profile page. If you're curious how this actually works, I think this cursor control, like, actually, I don't know how this works. Okay, this synth control has like the play button and the loop button and whatever. And then I think this code just like renders that. And yeah. Yeah, this is just an example of like, I'm just trying to show you guys examples of things you can do with libraries, right? Because if you try to implement like music stuff on your own, this would take a really long time and you would probably have a lot of bugs. Yeah, any questions so far? Okay, cool. Let's go to our last example. We're gonna look at some 3D graphics. I know a lot of you guys are asking like, how do we render cool 3D animations, right? So the answer is you use Three.js. Let me install it first. Yep.
Are there issues with combining the stuff with React sometimes?
Right.
What's the most common issue that you run into?
Right. So this is similar to what Alex talked about in this morning, which was like the way we tell these libraries where to render stuff is we specify an ID in our div. and then we tell the library to put its stuff in the div, right?
Mhm.
And that can be annoying because if you have like a lot of React code, then you have to make sure that all these IDs are unique.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it'll go to the wrong place.
Mhm.
So some libraries like Design, they have their own React components that you can import like this. And that bypasses the problem, right? But if your library doesn't have React components to import, then you end up having to do something like this. And like passing in stuff by ID, like we learned about earlier, it's really annoying.
So make sure that these are unique.
Yeah, basically. And even if they're unique, you might still have problems afterwards. If like React.
How do you specify an ID in React?
Oh, this is just an HTML. So you just say ID equals whatever.
Oh,
Yeah. But yeah, great question. So I think we're done installing that. So let's go to an example. What's an example? Okay, let's go. All right, so here are examples of things you can do in Three.js. They take a while to load. Oh, okay, it's like, yeah, basically, I think what you do is you pass in an object with like all the coordinates you want, and you also define animations, and then it like renders them in a realistic 3D manner. So let's go to the documentation now, and we're gonna do the same thing. All we're gonna do is try to copy in all the code. Okay, actually, this is a bunch of code, so I'm going to make a new component. We're going to basically just we're going to follow the cube example in the documentation, and we're just going to put that in its own cube component. So let me just set up this component first, and then we're just going to export it. And then I'm going to import this cube somewhere in the Catbook profile page. Let's replace the About Me section with the example. So where's About Me? Okay, it's here. So first we have to import cube from modules/cube. And then let's put it here. So if that worked, then we should just get like, it should just say test. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to take the Three.js rendering example, and we're gonna replace this test with that rendering example. So let's copy in all the code again. Let's put it in cube. We're also just going to put it in a use effect because I only want to run it once. And I also need to import the library. Okay, so so now that we've copied the code, let's take a look at what it actually does. So the library is called 3 for 3D, and it sets up a camera and a scene. And then it sets up a renderer to like render the graphics. And then it tells the renderer to make a new HTML element and put the graphics inside that element. And then we make a shape, which is using box geometry. And then I think we set the color of the shape, and we make a cube using that shape. And then we add that cube to the scene and we animate it. Okay, so let's just save this and see if it works. Okay, so we have like a rotating cube at the bottom of the screen now. Does this process make sense, by the way? All right, I'll assume that's a yes. So we have this cube at the bottom of the screen, and the reason it's at the bottom of the screen is because of this they did some sketchy code here where they took the document body, which is like all the HTML elements. They took the document body and they just added something to the very end of it. And the thing at the very end is the thing that we're trying to render. So what we actually want is, I wanted to put this cube in here, right? So I think instead of having this render happen inside the end of the document body, you want it to happen in here. So let me do that. We're gonna take this div element and give it an ID. I know I said we said not to do this, but it's the fastest way for now. So I'm gonna get element by ID of cube. And then, so what this will do is it will take this cube div tag and append the renderer to the inside of it. So now you can see that, oh, what? Why do we have two of these now? Okay, we'll figure this out later. But basically, we have a cube in the right place now. It replaced the div tag that we wanted it to. And now let me figure out how to make this smaller. So this is how we set the size of the renderer. So I'm just going to divide that by 4 and hope that works. Okay, we have a smaller cube now. Yeah, so you guys can see that in this lecture, all we did was we imported some forms or some libraries, and then we destroyed the cat book profile page using them, right? So now we have all these extra things. And yeah, that's all the coding I had for today. Oh, okay, the thing at the bottom is gone now. So there's only one cube now. There's no cube at the bottom. That was probably just like lagging updating. All right, anyway, so that's all the code examples I had. In like the last few minutes we have, I think it might be good to just look at some examples of libraries. So does anyone like have a web app function that they really need to implement, but they don't know how to? That they think would be like a good library, or there might be a library for? Autocomplete. Let's see if there's an autocomplete JavaScript library. So usage. Okay, I want to see like an actual example. Oh, okay, so here's an example. Wait, what? Does this work?
Oh, there's only one.
Oh, you have to use one of these. Yeah, this only autocompletes to specific things that the programmer already specified. But yeah, this is a cool example where if you have an input like a text box inside your website, and you only want it to autocomplete to specific options, but there's like a lot of options. Okay, if there's only a few options, you should just have like a select menu with a drop down. But if there's a ton of options, you can put all of those in this autocomplete. And I mean, I'm not going to install it now, but it probably works. All right, yeah. Anyone have any other stuff that they think there might be a good library for? Yeah. Line drawing? Oh, you can do that with Canvas. It's like the thing Alex talked about this morning. But I can just show Canvas library JavaScript. Like you can draw like rectangles, other shapes, images, lines with that. Okay, I'm actually curious what this looks like. So we're just gonna look at the most popular JavaScript libraries, and maybe you'll find something cool. Actually, these are not that cool. All right, anyway. Okay, the point of this lecture is just that there's a lot of JavaScript libraries out there, and they can do cool things. And if you have a feature that you don't know how to implement, you should look up if there's like an existing library that does it, like this rotating cube example and this music example. And yeah, that's all I had for today. I think next we have a Bloomberg sponsor lecture.